Hey, what's up? It's Ward Wrestling Live here. This is awesome. What a great show. We've got Coach Dave Malecek. Hopefully I didn't mess that up. From
Malecek,
UW.
yep.
Malecek.
Malecek. There you go.
I knew I was going to mess something up here. UW Lacrosse Wrestling over in Wisconsin. And he's got a heck of a program there. So before we get started, just a little background. He was just inducted in the 2024 NWCA Hall of Fame. 19 seasons at the helm there. 8 seasons with top 4 finishes. In 2024, they had 5 All-Americans, 1 champ. He's been 7-time Coach of the Year. He's coached 13 champs, 68 All-Americans. Himself personally was a 4-time NCAA qualifier with Northern Iowa. He was an All-American in 1994, finishing 4th. He competed twice at the Olympic trials, 2-time state champ out of Iowa. There you go. There's about a million other words you can read about him if you go to Dave Malecek on the profile, but I just pulled out some important stuff. That's who you're dealing with here. That's who you're talking to. So there we go.
Well,
welcome.
Dan, hey, thanks for having me on, Dan. I really appreciate it. I've been excited for this interview with you to kind of talk a little bit about UWL wrestling and some of the people we have in common and talk a little bit about that great state of Florida and the wrestling, where that's going. So yeah, you mentioned a couple of those things, Dan. I forget about those, but man, I will come back and say every time that it's not really about me. It's about the good people you put around you, and you put good people around you, good things happen. So I'm excited about, what we're doing here at UWL and the people we have involved, but also, God, you got listening a couple of those, man, we've had 13 national champs, 68 All-Americans. There's some great young men that have come through this program.
Yeah. And it's great to see a program that sticks with a coach, right? You've been there 18, 19 years. And
yeah,
I always tell people in every sport, if you look at the pro football, pro basketball, colleges at any level, the programs that seem to have success over time, they stick with somebody and they let that person build through their ups and downs and go through their issues and and you can see that at UW Lacrosse, obviously I'm sure when you first got there, the magic wasn't immediate and it took time to build. And here you are, right? 19 seasons later, great people around you. And I think my son's first tournament was at an open there. I think that was one of the opens last year. Did you guys have an open last year?
That's at Stevens Point. That's just north of us, about 2 hours.
There's north of you. Yeah.
They're in our conference, but yeah, that's 2 hours north of us.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so it's cool to see, but man, I know you've got an old friend of mine, Zach Cook, that has he was the coach of my son's team over at North Central. He's come home, right? I mean, this is where he was from, and I know before we get into anything else, go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zach Cook was a young man that we recruited out of high school and came here to UWL and competed for us a little bit. Then for some health reasons, he got out of wrestling and stopped wrestling for a little bit. And I went back to him. I said, man, you need to get into coaching. He was going to be a banker and finance and all this stuff, make all this great money. But he had this look in his eye, Dan. You've seen that look. It's a little bit of a crazed look, and I love it. And that's not even all the coffee he drinks. It's just the look he has in his eyes. But I coached him, and I said, why don't you start coming in and hanging out and seeing practice and like get in this coaching mode? And he was really hesitant at first, it makes the story even better, how hesitant he was, because I'm going to be a banker, finance, all this. And so he started coming in and he started getting drawn into it. And we started giving him more responsibilities. And then fast forward about 6 years later, he's one of our top assistants. He's our recruiting coordinator. He's busting his tail every day wrestling. I think the record he had was 9 times. He had 9 workouts that day, and he just take his shirt off, put another one on, a little more deodorant, right back at it. And he gave every guy his full effort. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Dan. This guy loves the athletes and loves what he does. And then we got to the point where Zach was getting married, which is probably his best catch he's ever had. This Meg Heafy ended up married Meg Cook, and she was 11-time All-American here at UWL in track and field and very well known on campus as an amazing athlete, an amazing young woman. I don't know how he did it, but he got her to marry him, and they had to make a decision. And Joe Norton had reached out and said, hey, we're looking at Zach Cook as an assistant coach and love to bring him North Central, and offered him a full-time job. I mean, you couldn't pass it up. And I was mad, Dan. I'm not going to lie, man. I knew what they were getting. I knew where his trajectory was. I knew, you could just see it like he had a bright future. But I thought the best thing probably for him was to leave, to go experience another program and get some more responsibilities. And man, he left, and it's no secret he turned North Central around. I mean, they were not very good. I mean, what Zach Cook did at North Central, it opened the eyes to everybody in the nation, D3. I mean, it was instant. Once he got there and got going and got his guys in place, they took off. And man, they trophied and had national champs, and they beat us. And that's the part that probably pisses me off the most, is they were beating us. We had gotten 5th that year, and he got 4th. And then the year before that, we had gotten 7th, and he'd gotten 3rd. And I was so proud of him, Dan. I want to make sure I was really clear on that, just how proud we were of Zach. But then we had an opportunity that we had an opening for a full-time position. And I called Cook right away. I said, what's it going to take to get you back to UWL? And so we got talking with him and got talking with his wife, and we had everything kind of put in place. And I'm 54 years old, Dan, like your age, like we were talking earlier. And I'm kind of getting towards the end of my career. Been doing this 31 years, 19 years here at UWL. I was like, I need somebody that wants to come in, wants to take this place, after I leave and I'm done. And I couldn't think of anybody better in the United States than Zach Cook. And I'll tell you the biggest difference, Dan, like when he got back and he interviewed, and a lot of these people were still here at UWL when he was here as an athlete or coaching. He had changed. He was more mature. He was more focused. He had a plan. He still had that crazy look in his eye. Had a cup of coffee in his hand. That didn't change. But this guy was so much more grown up, more mature. And at a young age, I think he's 32 years old. Or 34 years old. I mean, he's such a young man, but he had grown up and matured so much. He now was married. He has a child, Mia, who's 4 years old. He had just changed. He had run a program. He had all these ideas and input. We interviewed him. He impressed everybody. We offered him a job, and he ended up taking it, and he's back. And the reason he's back too is, there's an opportunity to win here. I think you see across, there's very few programs maybe across the United States that can put themselves in position to win a team title. We haven't done it here yet. We've been second twice. We finished in the top 4. But we have some pieces in place, and it's only getting better. We're getting a brand new facility in 2 years, be one of the best wrestling facilities in the United States, all divisions. It's the same people that designed Minnesota's room as the same group that's designing ours. And then you get some of the right young men, and our numbers are up. Most colleges are numbers driven. They're private schools that are really hurting for numbers. They're adding sports. They're adding whatever they can to increase enrollment. That's not the case here at UWL. And I know that sounds maybe a little arrogant, but it's the truth that we have over 9,000 students apply to UW Lacrosse, and the incoming freshman class is around 2,000. So our numbers are not hurting at all. And there's just growth and brand new buildings and facilities, and it's just taken off here. And I think, go ahead, Dan.
And I think I understand, because I know, obviously, when he went to Joe was kind of doing things by himself, right? A lot of stuff by himself and a lot of programs by himself. And to bring in a guy like Zach Cook, really, they you could see them, because I started talking to them and met them during COVID, and you could see how that worked. And he had somebody like you're going to have now that could really take that load off and build. And I think together, you obviously saw what they did, and turn around 5 years later, he's back at home. And I know there's some sad people over there, but like everybody says, the train's got to keep moving, right? And they got to keep doing what they're doing. And I think there was heartache at first. I think you talking to people, obviously I'm embedded in that program because of my son. And I know there was some heartache, there was some anger, but I think going through it, there's still love for Cook, right? And they appreciate everything and done it. And I mean, I reached out to Coach Norton, and I said I was going to have you on, and he was like, "Oh man, what a great guy! You're going to love talking to him." And I'm surprised you haven't had him on already. And and going to that, and obviously, and I'll make it public, I did that just out of respect. My son is there. The whole thing just happened with Coach Cook. I really try to be impartial, but it's tough because blood is my blood, right? So I reached out, and I was like, "Hey, Cook reached out, obviously, and I'd love to talk to the guy." And Joe's like, "Man, I can't believe you haven't talked to him already. Great guy, great program. We love him." So, and you probably already knew that. So that's
I appreciate
good.
that.
and
I
I'm glad
appreciate that, Dan.
people. No problem. Go ahead.
Well, I just think, and like I said, I appreciate you saying that, and there's always mutual respect. I think it's more in the Division III world. I'm very biased. I think there's more respect for each coach as we talk, and in some of the other schools, you talk to those coaches and get that opportunity to share ideas and bounce ideas off. And even when Cook was at North Central, we talked every week. I mean, I've known him, like I said, recruited him as an athlete. But the other part too, yeah, you talk about that blood, you talk about that sadness. And you look at it in reality that this happens in every job. It happens in every career where people leave and go to other companies for betterment of themselves. And Cook had an opportunity, but what made Cook's story that much better is that I knew those athletes would be sad. I knew those athletes would be upset. And he had some people very upset with him. And it wasn't like in hatred. It was like, man, you're leaving us. And that happens. I understand that. And that's no fun. But that showed me the relationships he had built with these guys, which he's doing with our guys. And they've welcomed him with open arms because they've been on the other side of the mat against Coach Cook. And they've heard the things he said in positive and how he treated his athletes. And he would always come and talk. And we would, some of our funnier stories is that at Matt's side, when we challenge a call, and we both go to the head table or the table, and we're looking at each other, and he'd say some funny comment. I'd make fun of Oklahoma Sooners, or like he'd have some kind of little jab at me. And so the guys knew, and we had some great duels. I mean, I'm really excited to be with him on the same side as us instead of being opposite sides. But yeah, I knew there. Go ahead.
Yeah, just like Norton said, he goes, yeah, for 45 minutes, we're going to want to beat his face in. But after that, we're friends, right? And yeah, and I'm sure the feeling's mutual. For 45 minutes, you want to beat their face in. And then afterwards, you can have a beer and hang out. But
right. Dan, I want to tell you real quick, we dueled him. He always had a little bit of the upper hand. When we dueled North Central, the first couple, we beat him. And I said, hey, can we get a picture? And it's so funny if you see the picture, it's after the duel. And beforehand, we're smiling, laughing. And I probably should have got the picture then. Well, we beat him in the duel. And then we took the picture. And those guys are not happy. And I'm smiling. So at NCAAs, I said, hey, let's make sure we get that picture together. Because I know Cook's family and Zayman's family. And they know my family. And so we always want to get a picture together. And then at the NCAA championships, I got that scrawly look on my face because we got beat by those guys. We should have done the picture when the tournament started.
Oh, that's funny. Well, man, you've done so much, obviously, in wrestling, and obviously you found a home there. And it seems like this is where you're going to be till you hang it up.
Yep.
But Ben, you've seen wrestling change so much in the last 20 years. We see all this NIL business and all these kids getting recruited year after year after year, but by using money and promotion and certain things. Is that affecting you at the Division III level? And what is your opinion on that kind of stuff? Because it's got to be tough coaching, recruiting, and then keeping longevity with a kid who might get that opportunity because now it's about money sometimes. Does that happen at the lower level?
Yeah. At different, I don't like to call it a lower level. I like to call it just a different division. Yes, NIL is very prevalent. It's obviously in Division III, Division II, Division I, NIL, everyone has it. And so it's a matter of having that opportunity to do that. In the long run, Dan, it's what's best for the athletes. But I'll tell you this, you talked about keeping guys. I've been here 19 years and we've only had 2 guys transfer out. One guy transferred out because he wanted to go with his twin, and the twin couldn't come here because we didn't have his major. And we have 130 majors, and it's construction management. We just didn't have that to the level he wanted. So one guy transferred out. We had another guy transfer out last year. It was just a better fit for him, closer to home, and he'd gotten beat by a couple of our guys, so he wasn't seeing the light, and I totally respected that. So keeping guys, our retention level is very good. But how we do that without NIL or with NIL is build relationships with our guys, Dan. We work really hard to build relationships with each guy. We only have 35 guys on our team. We're not like a lot of schools that have 50, 60 guys and they're numbers driven. We only have 35 guys, and that's really important to us because I'm going to work really hard, as Cook did with your son, to build a relationship, or Zayman did, or Joe did. They're going to build that really good relationship with the athlete. And so back on the NIL deal that, we have opportunities. Our guys have gear out there that's all through a system here at UWL that our administrators well aware of what's going on and everything that's going through. So we just really try to make sure it's what's best for the student athletes. And man, if they get an opportunity to do those things, I mean, why not? Let those guys do it. But I tell you what, keeping our guys in our program, keeping our guys here, not transferring out, it really shows a lot about our guys and about our assistant coaches, about our coaching staff, our athletic training staff, strength, chiropractor, team doc, sports psychologists. These guys want them here, and they build relationships with them.
Yeah, and something else I always ask when I'm speaking to Division III coaches, the thing that comes up when I'm always building relationship with these coaches, I also build relationship with the athletes down here, right? And a lot of them want to wrestle at the next level, but maybe they're not seeing opportunities or they're not getting looked at as much as they feel like it. And a lot of times I'll say, hey, have you heard of this school? And and they'll say, well, that's a D3, there's not money there. I can't get any money there. And I'm like, well, obviously, now that I've been through the process with my own child, I obviously know that that is not the case. As far as, I mean, obviously, there's no wrestling scholar. I understand that process. But how do you get around that? I've tried to explain based on what I've learned and what my knowledge is be patient with the process. I try to tell kids, like, what we did was we set up a checklist with our son, and we had him go through all these schools and programs. We had him check what he likes, and we never spoke about any money or how to get in until we figured out where we wanted to be. And what I try to explain is, first of all, go meet the staff and meet the people and determine if that's a place you want to be first. And if it happens to come to a Division III school, be patient with them, because there are ways that they can get you funding. But how do you get around that when you're recruiting kids or somebody's referring you kids and they're like, well, coach, I'm going to end up somewhere else just because they tell me you don't give me money.
Right. Well, and that's a great question. I think number one is we go through this all the time. I've been doing this my whole life. Like, don't believe the hype. All these parents that I call them the crazy parents that, have all these false stories and they speculate and we heard this at Division I or this at Division II. Hold out. They're going to have cash for you. They're going to have a scholarship. The one was classic. These recruiting systems or these recruiting people say, just wait. They'll hand you a scholarship as you get off the podium. I'm like, dude, that's never happened and it's not going to happen. So, the biggest thing, Dan, that you bring up a great question, and I don't have all the answers to it, but there's no really way around it. I think I just know how it works here at UW Lacrosse. And so if we're recruiting a young man from Florida, you're right on track. Hey, get to know the coaches, do some Zooms back and forth, get some names with the faces, and really kind of figure out, is that a kind of place I want to go? Man, this internet thing is like, Dan, you and I are old. I shouldn't call us old. We're just getting up there. We didn't have that before. We didn't have that in. So you kind of sight unseen, but everybody looks good in the pamphlets and all that. But man, you can find so many things and tours of campuses, and you can do it all virtually. You can get on YouTube and check out things, even like at UWL. Our wrestling room is on YouTube, our facilities, everything is on, so you can check it all out. And then really finding out that's a place. Then, if you get to that point, ours is way different. And I only know UWL, so I can't speak about North Central or any other college. I can only speak here that, you fill out your FAFSA, you find out you got to get admitted here. It's we're strong academics, and we're looking for that 3.2 to 3.5 GPA. We're looking for that 23 to 27 ACT, because it's going to be very strong academics. And when you graduate from here, it's going to do nothing but open doors for you. But on that side of it too, then you kind of get in touch with financial aid, and they talk about there's academic scholarships here. And if you qualify for those from Florida and you got a 3.5 GPA, and they go through all that with you per NCAA rules, I have nothing to do with any of that stuff. But I always encourage our people to talk to our financial aid office and our admissions office, because they can get academic scholarships. Then you got to find out, Dan, I don't know if you know this, but I have triplet daughters that run cross country and track at the University of Illinois. And so I've been on the other side of it as a parent, going through and like listening to these college coaches talk about these recruiting pitches and things they're going to do. And Some of them I was like, oh, that ain't happening. That's not going to happen. That's all BS. And then some of them I was like, oh, that was, I was writing it down. That's a really good, I like that. I'm going to use that when I'm recruiting.
Yeah, I like that line. Yeah, like in
So,
anything we do, we always learn something from
right,
our experiences, right? I didn't know
right.
you had triplet daughters. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
And so
they're all in the
going
same
through where I
place.
was going, yeah, where I was going with this, Dan, is like, we just wanted to be very organized because that's a lot of money. Like that's a big responsibility when you're talking like your son or anybody of putting them in debt. And really, is it worth it going to this place just to be a workout partner? Is it worth it going to this place to, I got a shot to be a starter? At this place, I can go and maybe get an amazing education, get a chance to be in lineup and be one of the top teams in the United States. It's got to be what's best for that young man. And then you start talking about environment, you start talking about culture, you start talking about opportunities. And then in the end, like with 35 guys, Coach Cook and I work really hard at building relationships with our guys. And do I get along with that coach? Do they have my major, which we have 130? We should have your major, except maybe one or two.
Except you don't have construction
Management. Yes, we don't like in agriculture. We don't have ag, but
we learned that.
yeah, right. But everything else, I mean, you're got to find and like doing that research and like keeping not like blinders on, but really keeping an open mind on what you're looking for. And I always tell our guys, you're going to know in your heart when you come and visit and get a chance to be on campus, be around our team. It's a two-way street, Dan. Like our guys are going to say, Coach, we hung out with this young man and his family. We love him. We want that guy part of our culture and our team. Or they're going to go, Coach, things he was saying, the way he was acting, and I trust him. They're like, we don't want him. All right, great. I'll tell the family before they leave, hey, we're going to go a different direction. Thanks for coming to visit. That doesn't happen very often, but I really trust our guys, Dan. I really do.
I think I've seen like where they might have some of their older kids in the program spend the day with them or wrestle with them or kind of get to know them a little bit. Yeah. And I know we had a checklist and we did our whole recruiting thing. We started in Florida and we went up through the Carolina and came out and then we ended up dropping them off at University of Iowa for wrestling camp. That was the end of it. And then we came home. But we had a checklist and we wanted to know that the town, everything we had on there, right? The town where you're living. Do you need your own car? Do you not need your own car? Like there were so many things that we took into consideration because some places don't let you have a car freshman year, right? So are you able to walk to the grocery store? Is the wrestler's favorite place in the world is Chipotle. Is there a Chipotle in town, right?
Yes and yes to both those questions. Yes, you can have a car, and yes, we have Chipotle.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that the place? I mean, that's where every
you got to go. Now you got to be hungry, Dan. We got to. Now you got to be hungry. Let's get going.
After their weight cut, Chipotle. So so that's cool, and man, it's fun. But yeah, I mean, you just got inducted into the 2024 NWCA Hall of Fame. I know I am involved with our local National Hall of Fame chapter, the Florida chapter, and I know a lot of times when I talk to those guys, and it seems like I've never heard a single one of them when I do the small interviews for them every year with the inductees, and I'll ask them a question, and I've yet to have one say, "I deserve this." They better, like. They're always very humble in there. The big question is, well, Ward, this just means I've been doing it for a long time, right?
Okay, so Ward, I'll go a different way. What the hell took him so long? I've been in this 31 years.
Right. What the hell took him so long?
That's why I should answer. Like, no, come on, man.
But man, what does that mean to you? I know you were put in your high school's Hall of Fame back in Iowa years back, and congratulations on that. But now
I appreciate it.
This is a big deal, right? I mean, this is recognized as one of the top coaches in our country. What does it mean to you to finally get that nod?
Well, I appreciate it, obviously. And you want to be humble about it. But I look back and like, it gives you a little validation because in the Division III, it's voted on amongst your peers. And so I have taken a really noted effort to try to get to know all 130 of us, 130, all these D3 coaches. And I have most of them down. There's a couple new guys that I haven't met yet, or at least go up and shake their hand and get to know them. Because I sat in that Hall of Fame with Coach Jim Miller was the head coach at Wartburg, and I was his assistant. And I sat there, and it was 2001 or 2002. The Hall of Fame induction used to be Thursday night before the NCAA championships. So we'd go to that thing, and then they hand out the brackets at the end of the banquet. So they made you come to the banquet so you get the brackets. They'd print them out that night. This is crazy, right? You need to know this, a little history for you.
They got to chum the fish.
Yeah. So so you had to stay. So make a long story short, I was sitting there and I was on my phone, and Coach Miller turned to look at me and goes, "Hey, this is history. You need to be paying attention." I was like, "Oh man." And I can't believe Coach just yelled at me at a banquet. And I was like, from that day on, I started showing more respect to it, and then getting to know and making these little notes. Like, I want to know all these head coaches because they're in the same boat. And when Zach Cook got named head coach of North Central, I called him right. I said, "Man, don't take that for granted." At the time, there was only 119 of us. When Grant Zaman got hired as the head coach, I called him right away. I said, "Congratulations. Do not take that from granted. There's only 126 of us in the United States, and you're one of them. And it's great pride and responsibility to lead that program." And so I think very humbled, but like, man, I got looking at that list of those people that are in that, and we've had some success, obviously, on the mat in the classroom. We've had some great young men come through. I was really honored to get in that Hall of Fame and being named National Coach of the Year this year. I thought we had a great national tournament. I was really proud of our guys, and we didn't even win the national tournament. We still got Coaching Staff of the Year. So I knew we were doing some good things, but once again, it's the people you put around you is where you go. My high school one, man, that one blew me away because we've had Olympians. Doug Schwab was an Olympian. Jared Lehman was a silver medalist. We've had teams win so many state titles, individuals playing. We had D1 national champs, D3 national champs, and then they put me in there. I was like, whoa, that was kind of a big deal. So it was pretty cool because my mom was able to be there and see that, my brothers and sisters. So that was pretty cool. But
That's
D3
awesome.
one, yeah, D3 one, Ward, man, that's crazy. As kind of lets me know too, like, I feel really good about what I've done. I really feel like we've put this program in a position to hand it off to the next person. It's in way better position. I had a real quick story that when I first took this job 19 years ago, I was 25% head coach, 25% fundraising for rec management, and then 50% teaching. And everybody goes, "You're crazy to take that job. You'll have no time for wrestling." And I sucked it up and saw it through and progressed. And you talked earlier, one of the first things you said about staying at a place long enough. I've been here 19 years for a reason, because we love it here, but also we get to win here. But they're great people in this community, but also it's made my job better. I went then and became 50-50 teaching, 50 coaching. Then we hired a full-time assistant. With Ross Needham was here, and then Bebeto Yewa, and now Zach Cook. Now my job's 100% coaching. We've got great alumni support. We raised a ton of money. We're getting a brand new wrestling facility, like I said, in 2 years. I mean, this place is going to be right in position for that next person to take it over and just run with it. But that's why we've stayed here too, man. I've had some great people. We've had opportunities to leave. My wife is the assistant director of admissions here at UWL. My youngest is a junior in high school. We've had numerous opportunities to leave. And I know that sounds kind of arrogant, but I feel like we're doing some good things. So people reach out, and every time we've said no, and we've stayed here because we both love it here. My wife and I do, and we're treated great. And this administration's been really good to us.
That's awesome. And getting a chance to meet you and talk to you has been incredible. I appreciate Zach Cook connecting us, and
Yes.
obviously, I reached out to Zach Cook immediately when I heard, because and I just said thanks for what he did with my son and for my son. We had some hiccups our first year, and he kind of took him by the collar and set him a little straight there, which is good. And Zaman was highly involved in that, and Zaman is absolutely tremendous. And I think one thing that put him at ease was knowing that Zaman was staying. And obviously him being a kid that came from your program, what kind of human he is. And then, but good luck to Cook and you. But
thank you.
Before you go, all these years being a wrestling athlete, the Olympic trials, NCAA tournaments, coaching on the sidelines, what has been one of what's one of your favorite moments that you look back on and go, wow, that was cool?
There's a lot of them, but I'll tell you just because it's so fresh. Biggest heartbreaks are right up there as well. When you talk about Grant Zaman not getting an opportunity to be number one seed, and they cancel the national tournament. So the next couple of years after the NCAAs, and we'd go there and he was coaching North, I'd make him get on the podium and I'd take his picture and send it to his mom and dad and say, here's the real national champ. He didn't get a chance. And that's a huge heartbreak. But I knew that smile on his face and how good he was, just to think about Zach Grant Zaman. But I'll tell you that one of my favorite memories was just this past year. We punched 4 guys into the finals, and Mike Douglas, our heavyweight, was our 4th one. But our 65-pounder Noah Leisgang upset the number 1 seed. And in the semifinals, and on a takedown the last 12 seconds. And we had now gone 3 for 3, and we had one more guy coming. It was our heavyweight. It pushed us into first place in the team race. And I looked up, and we were home. We were hosted, and the whole side was UWL fans. And I still get goosebumps just thinking about it right now. It was just, we just had a morning. We had a morning session. We went 4 for 4 and had our 5th get down there and be an All-American. And the crowd was going nuts, and they're doing our cheer, our fired up cheer, and getting everybody rock and roll. I was like, holy shit. And like, this is awesome. And I'll just never forget that feeling. Obviously, we came back that night and ended up 3rd as a team and had a national champ and had some heartaches, but I'll never forget that, going 4 for 4 in the semifinals.
That's awesome. And then I was thinking about this as you were talking. As an athlete, you competed at the Olympic trials. And I remember interviewing like Reese Larramendi or Blades or anybody like that. Yeah. And one thing Reese said was like, when I walk into the Hawkeye Arena, I don't pay attention. I'm focused. I'm going into Hawkeye Arena. Forget the crowd. I'm ready to wrestle, right? But she said when she walked into the Olympic trials, she couldn't help but stand there and like look around and take it all in. She's on the mat, and next to her are legends wrestling that she grew up idolizing. And it was so hard, she said, to wrestle, because I wanted to stand there and watch them wrestle. Was that something that you experienced in 92 and 96?
Oh my God. I could tell a million stories, but there's 2 things. One, in 92 was in Philadelphia, and we were in a high school gym. And it isn't what it was.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. And here's in 92, though, I sat down for weigh-ins in the locker room, and I just sat down on the bench, and the guy sits to the left of me and another guy sits to the right of me, because we're all getting ready to weigh in. And I had won a regional one. That's how I qualified. They used to give you a bid if you won like the Northern Plains regional. John Smith sits to the left of me, and Bruce Bumgarner sits to the right. And I look around going, which one of us don't belong together? And that was me. Yeah. But in 96,
those guys had a pretty good career.
Yeah, not bad. Now, what the hell am I doing here? And then 96, I won the regional again and qualified. It was in Spokane, Washington. At the time, I was a high school teacher and high school wrestling coach. I was 2 years out of college, but I'd been training, happened to win this and get out there to Spokane, Washington. And that was the year, Cross beats Terry Brands, and you're on this elevated stage. And that's when they finally started doing it right in 96, putting you on 3 elevated stages. And yeah, just like those young ladies were telling you, Ward, I was looking around. I spent more time, and I wasn't in the right training environment. It was all on me. I was happy to be there instead of like trying to do more, but a great experience, no regrets. I'm so glad I did it, and so glad I had an opportunity. And I got my butt whooped in 96. There's a reason why you go to, Hawkeye Wrestling Club, or you go to these clubs and train. You don't just hang out with high school wrestlers and try to train get ready for the Olympics.
And you were in the room, right, with these great. Right. I know my son is young, and he's still starting to build up a mindset, right? And he was very disappointed because we went to Peru and he went 0-1 and he didn't get the wrestle back. And then he was disappointed. We were in the car driving somewhere, and he was like, "Oh man, I was in the back practice room, and we were watching the matches, and there was Bo Bassett and Luke Lillendahl, and he was naming these guys, and I'm like, wait a second, they were watching. You were in the same room as them?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, think about that. Forget the 0-1, forget all that. Think about the experience you just had getting to know these people." So I want him to live the experiences, and obviously winning is better. He likes to, as a kid, he'd rather do that. But I think each experience, obviously wrestling isn't going to last forever. And one day you're going to go be a coach, or you're going to go be an attorney, or you're going to go do whatever it is in life. And I think you're going to want to look back one day and go, You know what? That was kind of cool. I'm glad I
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
well, I
It's just
appreciate
like,
you.
yeah, War, it's just like this, getting a chance to meet you. I appreciate you and all that you do for wrestling. And I appreciate your time this morning too. It was awesome. And I mean, anytime I can brag up Zayman and Cook and our alums and great things that they're out there doing, I appreciate it. But I do appreciate your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on. What I'll do is I'll get this up on my YouTube channel and we'll share it, and I'll get you and
Okay.
Cook a link so that you
Okay.
guys can share it wherever you'd like to share it at. And
Okay.
I do appreciate you coming on, and good luck this year with your season. I know official practices start.
Yeah.
I'm sure kids are already in the room getting work,
Yeah.
but and speaking of D3 coaches, we just had a Florida coach down here that was coaching at one of the local clubs. He went up and took a job at Lions in Arkansas.
Okay. Oh, sure.
So
Okay.
I think
Okay.
that's a young
Yep.
program coming up,
It
right?
is.
So
Yep. It
so
is.
so you'll meet a new coach, like you said,
I can't wait.
120. All right.
Connections.
Yes, sir. Take care. Thank you so much.
You bet. Take care.